for him to as he popped up.
He's
and
in.
Good to go. I don't know. It just came on my monitor, and he was moving some exercise equipment. I found that amusing. The one, the only Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Dave. Why you got to pull the curtain back and share everything?
It popped on.
I mean, you put it on video. You're the one who got to pull the curtain back, if we're being honest.
Popped on. Sam's doing some serious
it was
work.
in like that in-between stage where I never know if I'm alone or not.
Sam, are you're getting ready, I would assume, as most NBA lifers are, whether they work for or in the NBA or on the periphery, as you journalists, I should say, do, not we. I hope you're getting ready for a little vacation here soon, buddy.
I am. It's funny. This morning, it occurred to me that we probably need to chat about a few of my absences coming up. But yes, we're heading to the Hawaiian Islands pretty soon.
Oh, which one?
Kauai and then the Big Island. Actually, the other way around.
I've heard Kauai. I heard Kauai is like just freaking amazing. I've never been.
Up until 10 years ago, I'd never been to any Hawaii's, and then Southwest came along. Mm-hmm. So we did Oahu, then 2 years later Maui, then 2 years later Kauai. The Kauai is just straight up. Have you been, Sam, to Kauai?
Yeah, we've been lucky enough to be quite a few times. Kauai is my favorite.
Same.
It's one of the. I always kind of say that it's the more kind of true Hawaii type.
Agreed.
Vibe. It's got, if you go back to the old Jurassic Park movie, like a lot of that was shot in Kauai, which kind of tells you all you need to know. Just very green, very gorgeous, and not a lot of NBA activity. Which
these are champagne problems, and we'll move on here for the listeners. They're like, okay, rich people, but do you get the same feeling I do in Kauai, though, that of the three islands I mentioned, Kauai was the one that stuck out the most for me, is the one where the locals are just like, go away. We don't want you here. We'll tolerate you if you're going to buy our $5 lettuce and our $10 frozen Tony's pizza, which I'm not lying, by the way. I took pictures and everything, but don't you, the beauty of that. But did you get the same, not that they're mean, but just that you're like, okay, just please don't leave your garbage on the beach type of thing.
I'll be honest, I didn't. I don't know who you're running into. I enjoyed him. It wasn't.
It was Sam. Bob. It was Bob Smith.
Sam, you and I both know it wasn't who he was running into. It was the one that they were all looking at.
Very
like,
nice. I'm very polite, humble, and no trash, no nothing. I don't know. I just got the feeling they were like, "This is our island. It's perfect for a reason. Don't screw it up, you dumb mainlander." That's what I got.
Fair. That's fair, but maybe you look like such a.
There you go.
Cushy poker player.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Cushy.
Well, I was like back or stalling because I didn't know if it was appropriate. I think it's fine.
I think,
it's fine.
I think it's fine.
Now we're getting in the weeds. My family came from Oahu. As far as that, my dad my oldest uncle was born there. Dad went there a lot. And he would tell old stories about being the mainlander who would go there, and Howley was the name they always got.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I did not know that about you. There you go. So Sam's got a
Hawaiian
Sam. Ask a basketball question. What did you get us?
Oh, well, there's so many. Sam, you put out a great article yesterday with Anthony Slater, not Q&A, but a nice interview with Monte McNair. The one that really stuck out to me, though, was the coverage and Monte's kind of openness with Sasha Vezenkov, because Monte keeps a lot of stuff. He sets expectations. I think he kind of levels himself. Were you surprised how candid he was about the expectations for Sasha?
Probably not surprised, just because I talked to them a lot privately about Sasha, and at Summer League in Vegas, Wes Wilcox was out there a lot, connected with Wes about the Sasha excitement. But yeah, like to take that jump and say things publicly, I thought it's funny. Full disclosure, Monte in media circles is kind of known as a guy who's a very good guy. And then interview-wise, like it's tough to get him to be candid, right?
He says a lot without saying a lot.
Yeah. And Anthony Slater and I both, who, just to give you the way it went down, is we did a 3-way call with Monte and talked to him together. And we kind of got off the line and we were like, wow, he was really good. And we talked for 45 minutes, and certainly within that 45, there was plenty of kind of just filling time things that Monte said. But he was pretty candid about Sasha. And I know we'll probably get to this guy too, but the Keegan Murray excitement, like they're not really holding back and trying, I think, to explain not only what they were thinking this summer, but why they are more fired up than a lot of the fans in terms of what they did.
I'm going to paraphrase here, Sam. That's what stood out to Jay. What stood out to me, and we had a segment on this earlier when we talked about your article, is that Monty is if you can find the nuggets in between his sentences and paragraphs sometimes. And the part where he said, look, if something, and again, I'm paraphrasing, if it's not working out or if we run into issues or whatever it is, with the exception of the Herder pick, we have all our picks. We all have our second-round picks. We have very tradable contracts, attractive players. And it always seems from the beginning, Sam, I get this feeling that Monty believes that he can get more value and desperation out of other teams during the season than otherwise. And it does seem not that there's an imminent move happening. I don't want to say that, but that they believe they're a move away from a Larry O'Brien type of conversation and that they're still open for business on that once there's a distressed asset out there. That's what I got from that quote.
No, I think that's fair. Within that, it's the idea that I think the media and a lot of the fans, in their opinion, were missing the perspective on the long view and the flexibility and the optionality. But I think the point you're making, Dave, is that some of the names, for example, that we threw in there as possible options, the OG Anunobys. Now, listen, if you can get OG and not lose everything, that guy takes you to the next level.
Yep.
But the Jeremy Grants and Kyle Kuzmas, what they wanted to avoid was falling into that, I think, that small market trap of, trying to rush the process because you are too thirsty, for lack of a better way of putting it, and filling that cap room with a new face because you felt like that's what the people wanted. And they went a different way, but it does leave a lot of pathways open, specifically for next summer. And this part was in the piece, but it was pretty late, is the idea that Malik Monk is going to be a free agent, and Malik is a very important part of this group. And so I think they're really excited that it looks pretty promising that they can hold on to Malik next summer. And again, the idea of expected improvement is a big part of what they're looking at. And even Mike Brown, I don't think we use this quote. Monty had a comment about how in Houston, from Rick Adelman to Kevin McHale to Mike D'Antoni, that in his Rockets experience, those teams' best years came often in year 2, year 3, year 4, when it comes to a coach being with a group. And so they even feel like Mike and his group are going to, have more of an impact this year.
Sam Amick joining us from The Athletic, from the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Sam, you'd mentioned a couple names in the article: Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Kyle Kuzma. From what you've gathered, were they close in any talks with those guys, or was it more exploratory?
I mean, probably something between exploratory and close, but closer to exploratory, which is a word salad. It's, the OG one in particular, I think, and Pascal too, like genuine interest, but always with several teams, I think, ahead of them in line in terms of what they might be able to or willing to offer. So in those situations haven't gone away. Toronto, of course, is still at a bit of a fork in the road for their franchise, but nothing close from what I heard, Jay.
It does sound like, and going back to kind of Jay's comment to start, it does sound like they're very high on Sasha Vezenkov. And Jay had made the point earlier that they've got a pretty good track record when it comes to assessing talent. So whether it's Vezenkov, there's talk that Davion Mitchell, no surprise, has been an absolute workhorse on his jump shot in the offseason. And then the leap you mentioned about Keegan Murray, it almost sounds like that philosophy is sometimes the best moves, and are to not make those moves, and that sort of became their philosophy.
Well, especially when, they have some tricky things to navigate even without new additions. So you mentioned a while back the pick tied to Kevin Herder.
Yeah,
Kevin Herder had a pretty good season, really good season last year. Struggled in the playoffs a little bit, but like Kevin's a big part of their group. Well, Keegan, ascending through guys like Kevin, I don't know how else to put it, like that stuff's going to have to get worked out as far as pecking order in terms of how they function. Sure. And Kevin is a young dude who's going to be competitive and not want to lose, his place in the room either. So yeah, I think like they were looking at, the idea that all these guys get better. And I mean, listen, me well enough, Dave, especially I'm not ever going to carry anybody's water media wise and just pump out their propaganda.
Yeah.
So the tone of the piece with Slater was very deliberate from the standpoint of like, no, it does make a lot of sense. We have no problem painting that picture because I do think there was a lot that people were missing here. When you talk about the whole idea of Sabonis and Fox and everybody down the line except for Harrison Barnes being, in their prime,
yep,
that's a big deal. And then specifically Sabonis and Fox, that two-man game that it took them a couple months to like really find their groove. Because you remember the season before, they didn't really find that groove. They were fine, but they didn't win any games. So I'm buying a lot of what they're selling. I'm not going to lie.
Sam Amick joining us from The Athletic. Sam, I want to go back to what you're saying about establishing the pecking order. And, Mike Brown has spoke like really the next step he wants to see De'Aaron take is be that unabashed leader on the court. When it comes to establishing that pecking order, especially, offensively, when you have guys like Herter and you're looking for Murray to take that step up, is that more of a coach's thing, you think, or is it more of the on-direction court of a guy like De'Aaron Fox taking that role, getting Keegan more involved, being more vocal in that sense?
It's not to be political, Jay. I think it's both. But, Mike and De'Aaron have had a fantastic, vibe and chemistry so far as kind of co-leaders in, as far as the way the on-court stuff works. And I think that'll continue. And then within that, to me, it's just about how do the guys themselves carry themselves and perform. If you want to talk specifically about Keegan and Kevin, with Keegan, I would say like, the one part of the hype train that I would say let's, maybe wait on a little bit is that you can't forget that it's like a lot of young players, there were defensive struggles that remain. And we kind of mentioned this in the story a little bit, where as a group collectively, they were really bad defensively, and you don't really see the solutions right now. And so Keegan specifically is going to have to continue to improve on that end and be a dog, for lack of a better way of putting it. Or Mike Brown is not going to care that there's a hype train around Keegan Murray. He's going to pull him. That's what he does. So I think that to me is the kind of stuff they got to get through.
Does it seem like Keegan's going to need as much of a push from his teammates? And I know we're going off the rails a little bit here, but you get the sense that he's going to need as much of a push from his teammates as he is his coaches, as far as taking that extra shot, passing up that pass, or taking that opportunity from somebody else because he has a better one, both offensively and defensively. It seems like it's going to need to be both coaches and players that get in his ear.
I think it will, but just from the early sense that we've gotten at Summer League and even the conversations around them, the California Classic, I don't know, man. He seems like a dude who's ready to step forward. You know what I mean? Like even the way you hear coaches talk about him, Luke Laux, the Kings assistant who was running the Summer League team, I thought had a pretty fantastic quote about Keegan when he went off for those 2 games in Sacramento, played extremely well and also kind of flashed a different offensive game than we'd seen. He talked about going to Baskin Robbins and, you had vanilla last year and that was fine because it tastes good and it's ice cream. But now he's got all this extra wiggle and all these new kind of spicy moves in his game. And now he's coming at you with some chocolate, and now there's more to what he's doing. And that I think is born out of not only what we saw in the games, it's the guy that they're seeing in practice. It seems like Keegan is ready to try to, move his career along.
Sam, there's a lot of good stuff in your piece as well about the Domantas Sabonis extension. Just personally, where did you lie on that as far as did you think that was the right move to do the extend and sign, easy for me to say, or do you think it would have been, maybe wait to the off season, negotiate? Do you have to give that much money? Where did you land on all of that?
So on the money side, and this is not a kind of a black and white belief, but I have kind of come to the belief mostly that some of these massive contracts, with the way the cap continues to increase, we have this this initial reaction with these monster contracts. And then a couple of years down the line, they end up looking okay. De'Aaron Fox's extension is very similar. It now looks, very good, team friendly, really, all things considered. So I didn't have the sticker shock that others had. And more specifically, Jay, I thought it was a great move for them because I have vivid memories, and we've talked about this on the show, of last summer, just as a reporter, this is what we do. We flesh out rumors and we try to figure out what's happening. Like specific memories of hearing that people were a little unsure about how Sabonis felt about the Kings experience going into last season. New coach, how's he going to fit with Mike Brown? Oh, it sounded like there was some vision kind of, misalignment, if you will, early on that they had to work through. I ended up talking to Domas about it in, I think, February when we did an interview. And it's like that stuff was real. And the point is, in this market for this team with their history and everything they've been through, it felt like a world did exist where it didn't go as well as it did. And then ultimately he couldn't wait to get to free agency. And so to secure him deal wise at a time when the vibe is really, really good and just completely, put that stuff in the rearview mirror, if that makes sense, I think was the way to go as far as stability.
Sam Amick of The Athletic joining us. It's funny. I know you weren't listening earlier, but we had almost this exact conversation, Sam, that it almost seems like the Sabonis extension was under-talked about and underappreciated in some circles, but yet goes so much against the history of this team, not in losing players like that. Chris Webber re-signed here. DeMarcus Cousins re-signed here, but the Tyrese Halliburton trade, the big problem here was, but what about in 2 years? Will he come back? Well, he did come back. He's committed long-term, as you just said. And I got to ask, I'm putting you on the spot, and I don't expect you to know everything off the top of your head, Sam, but when you look at that Halliburton-Sabonis trade, is that in the conversation so far as maybe the biggest win-win trade we've seen in a long time?
No, I mean, no doubt. And it's funny. I mean, I probably get more Kings in my ear than I do Pacers naturally because I live here. So
sure.
Yeah, it's a massive win-win, and Tyrese is fantastic. And,
yes.
But when these deals went down this summer, and I'm hesitating again because it's like I'm not trying to be waving the damn Kings flag here, but there were some folks. Well, it's just the idea that Tyrese is great, and
yes.
somebody made a snark, not a Kings person, someone at Summer League, an NBA media person, made a snarky comment about how, man, Tyrese $260 million. That's a lot of money for a guy who's never been in a playoff game.
Right.
The win-win component. I really like what the Pacers are building. They are, at least right now, a little farther back in their journey than the Kings are. It is a massive step to not only break the playoff drought, but to compete with the Warriors the way they did, get to that game 7. Trade wise, it's a win-win, and Tyrese deserves that bag that he got. And on the Sac side, Sabonis is the guy for the next era, and they had to make sure he was here.
Sam Amick joining us. Sam, last thing on the Monte McNair front from my vantage point, something that he had talked about was, and he's always talked about this, keeping flexibility, whether it's with draft capital or contracts. And the one that really stuck out to me was contracts. Obviously, guys can get hurt, things can go awry, but like right now, would you say there's any really bad contract on the Kings roster?
Well, it just depends on how you feel about the Sabonis extension, just from a number standpoint. I think some people thought it was too much. I mean, I think our John Hollinger at The Athletic, was in that camp thinking it was too much. Beyond that, no, with the Richaun Holmes deal going to Dallas, that was the last bad deal. And that was a really bad deal. You had a guy not playing, making around $12 million a year. I don't have all their numbers in front of me. Do we have like another candidate that comes to mind?
No, that's what I said. I was really struggling to find one.
Fox and Sabonis have the biggest contracts on the roster. And I as you said about Sabonis, it's tough to find fault in those. Harrison Barnes is on a bit of a smaller contract. Keegan's on his rookie deal. We know
the
what
Herder contract's good.
But as you mentioned earlier, just kind of tie it all back together, Sam, that for example, that Richaun Holmes deal wasn't just about opening up room now and making moves now. They according to Monty in your article, they're now in a position not only where they're flexible during the year, but like Monk, they've got some moves that they're going to need to make next summer. And it seems like he's got them in a fairly comfortable position, especially for a young team that's the defending 3 seed.
I agree. And the Monk one, I still think is being overlooked a bit as far as how important they see him to be in their program. Like there's specific excitement about how we are well positioned to get something done with Malik next summer. Now with Malik, you have not only the fact that, let's not forget, in the playoffs, there were multiple games when he was carrying their offense.
Yeah.
And then more kind of granular is that relationship with De'Aaron Fox and that culture that he was a big part of in terms of just the happiness level of this group and the degree to which they enjoyed their jobs, which matters a lot. And Malik and his Band-Aid stuff and his vibe and the style of game that he plays, you know, kind of hot and cold though it might be at times, you know, that was a big part of their planning too.
Go ahead. Sorry,
Sam. We got to run here pretty quickly. Just real quick on the James Harden front. Obviously, there's a lot going on there, and you had a nice piece about that as well. It seems like there's not much of a market there because the Clippers don't really want to move off any, you know, key pieces to acquire him. If you just had to ballpark it right now, do you think he starts the year in Philly?
I will probably say no, because I deep down in my bones, I know that Daryl Morey, obviously running the Sixers, obviously all those years with Harden in Houston, he literally knows better than anybody in the NBA how bad the optics will be, how messy it might be if James Harden hits training camp. And we saw it, you know, in Houston before, and he dragged his feet on the way out of Brooklyn. And, you know, this is safe enough to share. I mean, it shouldn't surprise anybody. I've talked to Daryl in the past about like the way that James handled his previous exits. Like, so it's a little surreal for me to have had those conversations with Daryl and to know his perspective on that reality from the past. And then now know that, you know, that it behooves him to almost pretend as if that's not part of his calculus. I just don't necessarily buy it. If that, you know, if you understand, he's going to have to, I think, succumb to the human component of this dynamic here and get a deal done at some point before camp.
And we are out of time, but this is following up on something we talked about yesterday, Sam. So I just want to get your quick thoughts. And I'm a fan of Daryl Morey. You know that. And I think he's incredibly intelligent, a great GM. And we talked about this when the deal happened, Sam. I'm being fair here. I thought the James Harden deal was going to be a colossal failure for him. It has been a failure if you want to consider how it's ending. And who knows what he'll get for James. My question is this. Do you hear any whispers of any sort of seats being hot in Philadelphia with Doc gone, James Harden, Joel Embiid, whatever you want to make out of that? Daryl Morey seems to be above the fray, and I'm not entirely sure he deserves to be above the fray.
Not yet. You know, stay tuned to the Joel Embiid subplot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, depending on, even the other day, and I know we got to go, but
that's fine.
The column I wrote, I was admittedly almost annoyed with some of the reaction and then annoyed with myself because people seem to get the idea that I was downplaying the prospect of Joel not wanting to be in Philly. I was simply trying to report that in the past, he has talked about wanting to play his whole career in Philly. But in the present, there is a great understanding from the Sixers that if they don't do well enough on the James Harden trade, that Joel very well might have a change of heart. And the next piece to fall is going to be him asking out. Yeah. I think that could happen down the road, and they are well aware of that reality. So if that's something like that started to evolve, then that would definitely reflect poorly on Daryl again, and who knows what would happen at that point.
Sam Amick of The Athletic. Check out that article today about Monte McNair. Nice extended view on how Monte thinks. So Sam, along with Anthony Slater at theathletic.com. Download the app, subscribe. It's cheap. It's great journalism. Support great journalism and some of the best Kings coverage there is. Sam, when do you go? When are you going?
I love you, buddy. I don't feel like broadcasting all of the itinerary.
Oh, excuse me. I just wanted to see if we were gonna see you next week. Sorry.
No, all good. Okay. No, next week I'll be out.
Okay. Well, then when you get back, have fun. By the way, what's the address you're staying at?
Exactly.
We'll
Social Security, if you don't mind.
We'll see.
The plug for the alarm system.
He doesn't want. I know what it is. He doesn't want John coming over and raiding the fridge. That's the problem.
Also, doesn't want you to take a vacation and just crash his.
It's a nice place. Sam, appreciate you. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Be good. Thanks.
That's why I just turned my own mic off instead of hanging up the phone. That's
weird. A good question.
That's Sam Amick. We're live.
Try being a pro.
Break. We'll be right back. Hey, it's Carmichael